Hello again, I'm Drew.
I'm Becky.
And today we're having another short episode about Jaime Lannister and
Jaime!
we did an episode over Arya and her hero's journey. And I said, hey, let's do one about Jaime. And you said that Jaime didn't have exactly the same type of hero's journey.
No, Jaime doesn't have what is meant by the hero's journey. It doesn't mean Jaime wasn't a hero, especially at times. He did not have the hero's journey, the story arc that Joseph Campbell meant by hero's journey when he wrote about myths and everything. So,
well, this time I'm going to play devil's advocate like I normally do in this show. And I have Joseph Campbell's sheet of paper right in front of me of kind of his main thesis. So it starts out. Basically, it looks like a big. I'm holding paper. Theater of the mind here, people. I'm holding a piece of paper that has this big circle on it, like a recycling circle, and it says like it starts with everyday world, which you said kind of like is like the character's start or end or something like that, because it all loops back
sort
around.
of home where they live in, because part of the hero's journey can take place in an otherworldly kind of place, the underworld or in a supernatural world, and so this is just like our everyday world.
So Jaime Lannister, he's born. Cersei's born like 5 minutes before him, and they mentioned in the book how she never lets him forget that. So everyday world, he's born. Call to adventure, disruption and awakening, refusal of the call, supernatural aid, a mentor may appear. That's like the first kind of main hurdle. So call to adventure, I think that his call to adventure was becoming a Kingsguard. And like his mentor was Barristan Selmy for a long time, because Barristan Selmy, of course, was like the guy who died in Essos.
Yes.
On Dany's side, because he was in season 1. So then the next one is the first threshold, which is resistance and commitment. Threshold Guardians, Belly of the Whale, and I think killing the Mad King would kind of simplify this whole step of resistance and commitment. He had to resist breaking the oath of the Kingsguard, not to kill the king, which is the opposite of the Kingsguard.
Yes, because he was definitely a hero then.
Doing it for everybody,
right.
Which is obviously the most important thing about him making that choice when he was only like 16 years old, we can imagine. But I love it. Another cool thing I love just in general about Jaime and Cersei is that the whole idea of Robert's rebellion was that like they were like 15 when that rebellion.
Yes,
they were like 15, 16, and then Ned was like 16, 17, and Robert was like maybe 18, something like that. But so now, like, 20 years have passed since Robert's Rebellion, because, like, a whole generation, like, Jon has been born. So that means, like, everyone who was 15 during that time is now, like, 45, or, like, in their, like, mid-40s, early 40s.
Well, 35 would be the actual math.
Like late 30s.
But roughly,
give or take. Because it's cool because, like, they're really old people like Maester Pycelle or Varys who were, like, completely around with them.
Yes, right.
Because, like,
they were adults through the whole thing.
There's this whole generation, like Yara and Theon and everybody who's never heard of the Mad King, never lived under Targaryen rule.
Have only heard of him through stories.
So it's cool, like, to have someone like Jaime who's, like, kind of still in his prime, even though he was around during the time of the Mad King, you know?
Yes.
He was 16 when it started, so he was really young. But Road of Trials is the next one, so him being captured and losing his hand. Helpers arrive as needed. That didn't happen to him much. Consciousness expands, so like maybe he did learn a lot of stuff of Brienne on the road. Tests and challenges and prepare hero. Kind of became more sympathetic towards people like Brienne and other people, where it's like, you guys don't need to do this to Brienne, it's fine, she's the only heir of the Sapphire Islands and all that kind of stuff. So Road of Trials, that's him. Nadir/Abyss, which is the Supreme Ordeal, which is kind of more vague, but meeting with the goddess. He talked to the Sparrow for like 5 seconds, which is kind of maybe counts. Women as temptress, Cersei. Atonement with Father. He talks with Tywin at the beginning of season 4, saying like, I'm going to be in the Kingsguard. I'm not going to start my own house. I'm not going to go back to Castle Rock, Dad.
But that didn't really work out.
But Jaime still, he told his dad that, his dad being such a not a great mentor in his life, but being such an ever-present thing where Jaime could always say, but my dad's rich, so Locke, who has me captured and about to cut off my hand, how about you just let me go because I'm rich and I'm daddy's boy? And then he got his hand cut off for that. And if that was an indicator for Jaime to stop leaning on his father, then that's a good...
That was a pretty good hint, wasn't it?
Pretty hint.
Strong hint.
And a constant reminder of like, I can't just rely on my family. Like I'm an older gentleman at this point in my life. I want to be a Kingsguard. I want to fulfill any duty or oath that I have because people call me Oathbreaker, you know. So
Yes,
I thought
right.
that was a really good moment with him talking to his father. Revelation brings new perspective. Maybe realizing he was going to help Tyrion. That was cool, I guess. Transformation, transformed perspective gives birth to the transformed self. New attitudes, beliefs, and behaviors emerge. Self is reborn. Seeing Cersei as a monster and like finding out that Olenna killed Joffrey, that's like kind of like a new perspective and that new attitude. Like, because in season 7, he saw that they had that really, really short conversation about her blowing up the Sept of Baelor.
Right. Yeah.
Which, like, he saw as the first indicator that Cersei's crazy and that he needs to leave her, which is kind of transformation, like the first time. And then there's the apotheosis, which is final death and rebirth, where ultimate boon, consolidate experience, build new meaning. So I think that was when he decided to leave Cersei, realizing like, hey, we made a promise, like the ultimate.
Yes.
A boon is like a request, kind of, right? A boon.
Oh, I don't know. Let me see how it's spelled. Spell it to me.
Boon.
The definition of that word I know is like a big, like
Offer,
a big great
yeah.
thing that happens. I thought like
Sometimes like I only know this from a video game, but you like complete a trial and the tribal elders will grant you a boon, which is like a request,
so like a
kind
reward or okay, yeah. See, I don't know that particular usage of that word. Sorry.
So like building new meaning, consolidating experience. So like this is like him being like, I can't believe Cersei, you just lied to everyone like this.
Yes.
I'm out.
Yeah.
So then he leaves, abandons Cersei, which is his main. What do you know what apotheosis means?
I do, but I'm trying to think how I can explain
I haven't done a
it. Don't
spelling
do
test in a
that to
while.
me.
Sorry.
Don't do that to
Sorry.
me. But it's like it's oh shoot, and I may be getting confused. Yo, don't ask me.
I won't.
Like
We're moving on.
Okay.
Return threshold. Challenges to the return. Refusal of the return. Magic flight. Rescue from without. Final challenge. I think that's when he decided to stay with Brienne, because the final challenge was like the Arm of the Dead, which he thought he was most likely going to die in. But then he decided to stay with Brienne and stay with Winterfell, because we mentioned it last week or like a few weeks beforehand that Jaime never crossed his fingers behind his back and said, "I will definitely be on your side forever, Dany."
I'm going to fight the dead.
He only ever promised to fight the dead and uphold his word, which he technically did. So when Dany says to Tyrion, "I guess your brother did betray me because he went back for his sister or whatever," and then Tyrion could have been, "Well, actually, he didn't."
He did not
specifically, he
betray
didn't
you.
pinky swear that he would stay with you forever. So it's kind of one of those things. But he decided to stay with Brienne. But then the next one, so that's Return Threshold. The next one is Return, which he, Master of the Two Worlds, Freedom to Live. He goes back to Cersei, because that's kind of his return, to choose to go back to Cersei. So this is a big circle, of course. So far we have, it starts with Everyday Worlds, Cult Adventure, First Threshold, Road of Trials, Nadir/Abyss, Supreme Ordeal, Transformation, Apotheosis, Return Threshold, Return, and now we're back to Everyday World, which you said was kind of the beginning / kind of the rest of his life. So Everyday World was, at the beginning, was him being born of Cersei because they're twins, and he died with Cersei as they were born together.
Right.
And maybe she died first, but like they were born. I doubt it, because I doubt Bricks were choosing at that point. But and that's Everyday World. So that's, he kind of a semi following Joseph Campbell's monomyth of the 8 stages of a hero's journey, kind of.
Yeah. Do you want me to tell you what the why
he's not? Yeah, I played devil's advocate enough.
Okay.
You go ahead.
Okay. He didn't have, and it could have been different. It's really hard to see this while the story is still ongoing, right? You didn't see it with Arya until really she killed the Night King, and then it was like, oh, all of those things led up to this. But with Jaime, I think Jaime's journey was primarily an internal one, and that's okay. That can still be a hero's journey, but he didn't really have an overall call to do something, like a calling to do something, or an overall goal either that he set himself, or like I said, like we were talking about with Arya, that was sort of put upon her from the outside world that she didn't even know about.
Like a goal or destiny.
Yes,
like he never had like, Jaime is destined to kill the Night King, or like,
Right.
that was never his thing.
That was never his journey, you know, in the more general way of
but
his
also
journey.
in another devil's advocate way, his journey / destiny was like dying in the arms of the woman he loved / because like you said, that death can be the end of a character, it can be
Right.
like the finality of it. So his journey was like staying loyal to his sister whom he loves, and that like that's not very a super duper hard destiny thing to do. Like, I want to keep loving my family.
No, it would have been much harder for him not to go back to her.
Or if his destiny was to break away from his sister entirely, which he almost did, but he didn't.
Right. Which is another reason he wasn't on a hero's journey. He did not complete the hero's journey. I mean, there are other things to do. He certainly met challenges and had trials and had things to overcome, and some of these things he met heroically, and he certainly grew as a character. He certainly grew as a character. He had a lot of personal growth, and you know, he and Tyrion have that moment where Tyrion complains about personal growth. Oh, I can't remember how he worded it when they were by the fire.
The perils of self-betterment.
Yes, I always forget that. I love that, though, the perils of self-betterment. And Jaime had been through some of that, definitely, as well. But in the end, I think his love for Cersei was just too he couldn't do it. He wasn't strong enough.
Also, that, like, you know, taking any character from Game of Thrones in particular, who people, you know, characters who are pretty gray and pretty nuanced, may I say, it's weird to kind of try to like, and this is how Ramsay Bolton is on the hero's journey. Like, we're not gonna do.
Not everybody's on a hero's journey.
We're not gonna do all these. Talking about all these characters. We'll do a season wrap up talking about like certain people like Stannis or something. But like, it's kind of cheesy to like, and this is how Jaime Lannister was like Luke Skywalker all along. It's something like it's kind of hard to sequate great word that I just made up.
Actually, it kind of works.
It's hard to push someone's whole life and hero's journey into like kind of one arc that is classic in all of literature of like a hero's journey.
Oh, absolutely.
Because he like I said, like we mentioned in our last cast about like hero's journey is like it's a common story that appears across all cultures.
Right.
So it's like, you know, China and Europe had the same stories of someone conquering evil. It's not like someone dying of bricks, you know. It's not. Right. But like Jaime, it's more. I'll give it to Jaime. Like he had a little less more generic story than say Arya or
I
Jon
think he
did.
had a fabulous story.
So like the fact that we have a character who you liked a lot more than I think I liked him kind of ironically that he was such a terrible guy, but you know Jaime would just shout him a phrase in the records of time forever. But it's cool to have someone who's more like a bad boy and more of like very complicated man comparatively to all these saints and stuff.
He did some bad stuff, no doubt about it. I think ultimately, though, he was, for some reason, and I don't know if we're supposed to know or be able to figure it out, or if it's just because of growing up with Tywin or because of his guilt probably about Cersei, but he's a very broken man. And, you know, being broken was a theme of this show from the beginning. Wasn't it the second or third episode that was even titled Bastards and Broken Things? Right. So Jaime was a broken man, and again, that either came from growing up with Tywin and seeing the way Tywin treated people, and especially the way he treated Tyrion, and maybe being more sensitive. I think that Jaime certainly had more of a heart than Cersei ever did. I'm not sure she really had one.
And Tyrion said very wisely in this season that Jaime's like, oh yeah, our sister's a monster. Did you know that? And Tyrion's like, dude, you always knew she was a monster, but you chose to love her anyway because she was your sister and you loved her.
Yes.
So I definitely do. I think no matter what your opinion is on the last season and all people's character arcs and crazy things people do in the season, I think Jaime has had a really, really great story because, like you said, like Jaime seeing his father treats people so terribly as Tywin Lannister and stuff, like. Jaime was raised a similar way where he was thinking, oh, I'm better than all of these people because I'm the most handsome person.
Yes.
I'm the youngest Kingsguard ever. I have 2 great hands. I am rich. I'm smart. I'm beautiful, baby.
Yeah, and he's the best swordsman, right? I mean, nobody can beat him.
It was such a cool thing in season 4 where like you kind of saw the first, like, season 3 was him like being like, still pretty swarmy, and like him being like the lowest pits of himself, and like you just see him like with his hand around his like this chopped off hand around his like neck as like Locke and all those Bolton loyalists like throw him in the mud and stuff.
Yeah.
But season 4, like he's covered, like his face still has scars on him. He's missing a hand. He's realizing like I can't live the way I used to. I'm going to have to make a change. Like not change who I love, but change how I conduct myself.
Right. How I live in the world.
And man, Jaime had a really good arc in the show.
He like, really did.
Season 4, like would season 1 Jaime send off Brienne equipped with armor and Pod the Rod with her to help him around? Like Jaime in season 1 wouldn't have done that, and Jaime in season 4, after learning so much stuff and losing so much stuff, he lost his son like the day before he did that to Brienne, but he gave Brienne like her new cool like black armor. He gave her a sword that was his. He gave her his sword.
His sword, because he thought he couldn't use it anymore.
And like he said to his father, like, I want to keep my oaths. And one of the oaths that he made was to Catelyn Stark to bring her daughters back safely.
Right, because he didn't want to be the Oathbreaker anymore, and because he never was in the first place.
Yeah, and even Jaime said all like annoyingly to Brienne, like, because like there's of course that little very short time period where Brienne was at King's Landing and like was in the same room as Sansa, where like Sansa was at King's Landing and so was Brienne. But Jaime was like, what am I going to do for Catelyn Stark's corpse now? Because we don't know where Arya is, and Sansa is trapped here. What can I do? But the fact that Sansa escaped, obviously, but like Jaime just like talking to his father, he decided to be a different person than he was 5 seasons ago,
right?
Whatever.
But even before he got his hand cut off, even though he was definitely self-interested, and I would argue who wouldn't be in that situation where you're just trying to save your own neck, but even the part of the reason was that he had intervened on Brienne's behalf, and he made up that story about the sapphires. So I do think that in a way that he had a humanity inside of him that Cersei really probably didn't have, and she had probably manipulating him their entire lives, and he also was his father's son, but I think that there was some sort of goodness in him that and the goodness was there. You could tell by the way Tyrion talked about when they were children, and Jaime never called Tyrion a monster, never treated him differently. So there was something inherently good in him, even though he certainly wasn't perfect. He was often a very bad guy. But then can you imagine, though, to do what he did, to kill the king in order to save the whole city, but to become known for breaking an oath, even though breaking that oath meant you saved everybody? That's pretty harsh.
And just like, I think there was a great, like, it's just like Jon did. Jon knows what it's like to. Jon now knows what it's like to kill a Targaryen monarch and do it for like everyone.
Right.
Like,
yeah.
And I think there was a line like on Twitter post which had like 2 pictures of the twins of Lannisters and Jon and Dany, where like it says, Jaime was willing to kill everyone for Cersei. Was willing to kill everyone for love, and Jon was willing to kill his love for everyone.
Oh, wow, I like that.
Because like Tyrion, like Jaime, he was willing to kill everyone for Cersei, but Jon had to do the opposite. But Jaime really is. I feel bad for being so harsh to him last episode, because to the way they showered him with praise in the Kingsguard book. But he was a complicated guy. But it's weird because, like I think I even mentioned in the last cast, like, was him going back to save Brienne from being eaten by a bear, was that his true self just being like, this isn't necessary, guys, why do you have to be mean? Or was like him threatening, because like, who is the real Jaime? Because like when he threatened Edmure Tully to launch his baby on a catapult,
and I said, he wouldn't have done that, would he? But you're right, he probably would have.
So is that the real Jaime, or is the real Jaime going back to making sure someone isn't sexually assaulted?
I think it's both. I think it's complicated, but I think that everything bad that he did and everything bad that he was willing to do was all for or because of Cersei. I think she was his weakness. She was his oh shoot, I can never remember what it's called.
Kryptonite.
She was his kryptonite, but also his fatal flaw. But I also think it was very much a battle within himself for these reasons. He felt broken. He felt like he didn't deserve things, even though he was often very smug and felt like he deserved, was very entitled.
He was always
we can buy anything we want.
He was always so like swarmy and really
Yes.
good just lines in the first seasons and stuff too.
Yeah, but I do think that even though there was some goodness in him before he had his hand cut off, that then when he really, I think, just wanted to give up and die, and Brienne wouldn't let him, and then they connected in a way that he really had probably never connected with anyone before. Do you think?
Yeah, because they had that great moment where like Jaime refuses to eat after getting his hand cut off, and Brienne's like, "Oh, just because you suffer one time in your life, that you're just gonna give up like a coward? People have to suffer like this for like many days of their life, but you're gonna be in a palace in 5 days anyway. So you're gonna complain now, Jaime?"
Yeah.
Like Jaime being humbled with Brienne, and the fact that he like chose Brienne, or like at least to sleep with her, like
for a couple nights,
to love her, I guess.
Nights. Yes.
It's weird, but he definitely did, like, Nikolaj Walcaster, whatever his name is, he did a great job too.
Yeah, I think he was a great actor, and the character was just really so well written. And I think anytime you can say, well, which one was the real one, I think that's sort of a sign that they've done a really good job of writing a character, because even though, okay, it's an extreme version of real life, it is true that in real life, everybody pretty much sometimes does things that they regret later, does things that or says things that they wish they hadn't done or said. Yeah. And so this is that on steroids, because it's TV. It's a story, but we're all sort of made up of
stories.
Yeah, we're made up of stories, but no, we all have our better side and our not so much better side.
And how we choose to remember people,
yes.
too, is one of the most important things, like, what makes us human and how we view ourselves and the actions we do now to how we will be remembered.
Right.
Because, like, for example, Tyrion might view Jaime differently than Yara might, or something.
He always will, because of their childhood. And I think they did a good job bringing that around at the end.
Along with the fan base, of course, too, because, like, you might like Jaime a little more than... I think it's just funny how, like, all of the stuff he's done in his Kingsguard book. But I think he was a very complicated man. You might like him more because, how the fan base chooses to remember Daenerys. They remember Daenerys as the liberator of slaves, or will they remember her as the the butcherer of innocent people,
Yeah, and I do think that the character went through changes, but I never really felt like the character of Jaime changed in a way that was an abrupt right turn or an abrupt left turn where it was inconsistent. I think they developed it slowly, hint, hint, hint.
Very slowly.
Very slowly over time, that road trip with Brienne, and you saw him change. And that moment when, he had saved her from being raped the first time, and that was good. And it was, I think, like I said, out of the goodness that was there, I think the goodness was there in him from the time he was a child, because that's what Tyrion remembered. But he's already started to be they're taking him home to King's Landing, and then he decides to make them turn around and go back and save Brienne. That moment was really, I think, maybe the turning point for him, where I really hoped that maybe the good Jaime would win.
That he actively risked his own life.
Yes.
Like, I mean, he did that same thing when he saved her being assaulted and stuff, but like the fact that he jumped into a bear pit and with one hand pulled himself up.
Right, and had to threaten the guy to take him back, even though they had gone a far way down the road already, a far piece down the road already. He had to threaten to get himself taken back, and he did strangle his cousin, but all of that was before his hand got cut. Right. But I just think he was very broken, and I believe was certainly evidence that he carried a lot of guilt about his relationship with Cersei and that it wasn't right. And I think that probably I don't remember if this was in the books, or I've only read the first one, or if there were hints of it in the show, but that maybe he had tried to cut it off at certain times. And
with Cersei?
Yeah. But ultimately she was his kryptonite. And
but also like just also made up like who he was.
Yes,
it's weird. It's a weird kryptonite because it's something that defined his character for such a long time. But then, like, I think I mentioned this in our first cast ever. Like, he spent so much time away from her, where he realized there's like it's like an addict who like you leave on a stranded island. It's like once he doesn't have a drug like Cersei always in his system, he's able to think about other stuff and think about saving people other than himself and Cersei and helping out Brienne and helping out other people.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because as long as he was right there by her side all the time, he was constantly under her influence, and she manipulated everybody, including him. And I don't know that she was capable of loving him the way that he loved her, or that she was capable of loving anyone the way that he really truly loved her. Now you can say, well, oh God, that's disgusting. Okay, yeah, pretty much it is. But he still loved her. It was still it seems weird to describe it as kind of a pure kind of love, but in a twisted kind of way. Yeah. It was a very pure kind of, it was real. Okay, pure is not the word, but it was real. It was real, absolutely. And that's a really good point, that as long as he was away from her, he could think more clearly. But it was sort of like once he got into the sphere of influence, he was not thinking as well.
Because like if the queen at the time wasn't Cersei and she had just blown up the Sept of Baelor, Jaime would have been like, hey, look behind you, stab. But like since like the queen who blew up the Sept of Baelor was his sister, and he walked back into that room, and like you can just see the poison of like his love for her, being like, Tommen died, and she's like, Tommen, the king betrayed me. Like even Jaime is like, this is crazy.
Yes,
he still like he has questions about their love and their relationship and like how they view their children, their like Tommen and Joffrey and stuff, but he still is like completely loyal to her in that moment.
Yes, right, and that was a troubling thing to see, that even after she had done that, he still couldn't let
the one
go.
Thing he tried to stop when he killed the Mad King, which is blow up a part of the Red Keep, or blow up King's Landing with wildfire. But man, this is a great Game of Thrones character, which I've had to pitch the show to anybody, where it's like, yeah, you have villains. Yeah, season 1, he was a villain. He attacked Ned Stark in the street, killed his men, pushed a kid out a window. But, he's complicated, and, when I first started the show, I did not expect to like his character 7 seasons down the line.
No, me either, absolutely not.
But season 8 has been a real great magnum opus, if you will, of his acting. Him confronting Bran was amazing.
Yeah, because he felt remorse for that.
Yeah, and so I feel like Jaime is one of the main cruxes of what makes this show so great. Like, you can have people like Stannis, which burned his child alive before he died, but
didn't care.
Yeah, but you can still people are complicated and life is complicated.
Yes,
so it's cool to have someone who's a villain. You can argue that Cersei basically was a Disney witch / queen, Disney evil queen the whole time. But Jaime was pretty complicated. I really like how life is complicated, man.
Well, and it's rare to have that in a visual medium like TV or movies. Usually you have to use shortcuts because you have, say, 2 hours for a movie. Okay, so that's why you end up with very two-dimensional characters. And one of the great things about a very well-done show like this, that's a complex show, that you can develop those characters the way you can in books a lot more easily than you can trying to make a 2-hour movie out of a book.
Because Hunger Games had so many books, and they only have to crunch it all down to one movie. So great, so perfect. This was a TV show,
right? Where you could develop all of these things. Again, hint until recently. But you can see that Jaime was someone who really was messed up, but he had that little kernel of goodness that I think grew over time. And if you think about that first season, because I'm just, obviously he he threw Bran out the window because of Cersei, or so that they wouldn't be found out. But then later, when he went after Ned the way he did, which was really horrible and wrong, that was also, to protect their secret.
But also the fact that when he confronted them in like season 6 of episode 1, like Tyrion had been kidnapped at that point. So Jaime was like,
right.
Ned, your wife just kidnapped my brother.
Yes.
How about you give him back? And Ned's like, Tyrion's going to pay for his crimes, even though we're not sure that he did it.
Yeah.
But
Jaime did not have to go there and confront him in the street like that.
But he was trying to protect his family too,
yes.
though.
Yeah, and that's what he said, and that's what Bran seemed to understand, because when he apologized to Bran, that's what he said. But it's important that he did apologize to Bran. It shows that he has that conscience.
Well, when he had that meeting with like Dany and stuff, he said, "I'm not going to apologize. That was for war." But he did apologize for pushing Bran out the window.
Well, yeah, he did, and he went to him and was like, "Why didn't you tell them?"
Yeah, why didn't Bran tell everybody that Jaime was the person who pushed him out?
And Bran's like, "Oh, yeah, well, you were protecting your family. What good would that do?" But I think what we've seen is that Cersei would have never apologized for anything, and then after Dany burned the whole city, she wasn't going to apologize for anything. And there is the difference. I talked about this, like the feeling remorse versus not feeling remorse, and I think that even though Jaime did these things, he does feel remorse for them. And even when he says, "I would have killed every person to get back to Cersei," he recognizes that
it's terrible.
That it's terrible, but she's his weakness. And but in the end, I do think it would have taken much more strength to stay than to go back to Cersei. And but I don't know, of all the great moments on this show, at the end of season 7, when he was riding out of King's Landing alone headed north, I don't know that I've ever felt so happy. That was one of the greatest moments of the whole show to me, to see him standing up after he had stood up to her, but you still didn't know what he was going to do, and he had stood up to the mountain, but then you see him riding north. And it was a great scene all the way around, because the snowflake lands on his hand.
Metal hand.
Yes. But in the end, though, and so I see it sort of, Jaime's a very broken man from the time that we first meet him, for a lot of reasons, some of which we probably will never really understand. But he's on this sort of journey of healing, really. Oh, wow, is that a 2019 thing? He's on his journey of healing.
Man.
Yes. But he ultimately, I think, is too broken. He can't.
Yeah. Because, he was trying to find a good balance. I think he did, going back to honor his word to fight the armies of the dead, but then he just went back to it. He just went back to his sister. So it's, like I said when it happened, it's a shame. It's realistic of his character. He wasn't a broken man, but he was a complicated. I've said that word seven times.
He was
this episode, but
I don't think that he really thought he could help Cersei or save her. I mean, when he and Tyrion speak after he's been captured, I think he knows that he's come back just to die with her.
He had to try, though.
Yeah. Yes, he had to try
to show his love and to extenuate it, and
but I think he's one of the better characters of the show.
And definitely had, I think people might be divisive on his ending, but I think it's very consistent and one of the best ones that happened in this season in particular. So,
well, the fact that they died together, even though I don't personally like it. Like, I want Arya and Gendry to have many babies and live together and be happily ever after. And I wanted Jaime to stay with Brienne and have many babies and live happily ever after.
Well, no, I didn't want that. I wanted Tormund to marry her, but then
I know.
He gold blocked her and got in the way.
But I see, for the character, he just was never going to overcome that love for her. And yeah, I feel dumb. I called it pure now, but it was real. It was very real to him.
Real for him.
The only real true love for someone he had ever felt, I think, other than Tyrion.
Well,
so Jaime,
good old Jaime, good on you. Good actor, great, very, very well executed throughout all the show. Rest in peace, dude. I don't know what to say,
sorry, Jaime, but you died in the arms of the woman that you loved.
I would say you deserve better, but you kind of go.
You kind of didn't, but
I mean, that would have been the ideal scenario, sailing off to the sunset with his great, tall, blonde babies. But oh well, good on you, Jaime. Did what you had to do.
Yeah.
Take care. I'm Drew Johnson.
I'm Becky.
Goodbye.
Bye.